So apparently there's a little tea in Virginia politics. Just read this article. I'm going to just show you a quick screen grab of it. Republicans in swing districts unite in Purple Caucus. Purple Caucus. Quick little side note before I get into the tea of all of this. My campaign colors have been purple, and I chose purple because of two reasons. One, Virginia is a purple state, but two, prior to 2014, I had a lot of Republican ideals. Now, outside of being very liberal when it came to bodily autonomy access and keeping the government out of my doctor's office, I have had Republican views and I have voted for political party members on both sides of the fence. In fact, in our vote registry here in the state of Virginia, up until 2 years ago, I was quite literally listed as an independent. That is evidence that I come from a place where I had different ideals. Now, fast forward, obviously, 10 years later, I am very much an outspoken Democratic candidate. However, my past is a part of who I am and why I am who I am and why I believe that I am more of a purple candidate. I am someone that policy wise, a lot of people across political lines agree with and can get on board with. With that being said, my opponent, Delegate Batten, is not purple or moderate by any stretch of the imagination. For example, she has basically voted against every piece of legislation introduced to strengthen and fully fund our public education for K through 12. She has voted against expanding early childhood education and funding early childhood education. In this most recent General Assembly, she voted against expanding the hours and language run hours so that families that say are emergency service workers or own their own business can't get access to these funds that might need out of normal business hour childcare. She has voted against the most recent budget that was introduced that was going to fund our public service members, such as police officers. And she was only one of a small minority of her party to do so. Like 10 Republicans voted no. In fact, last cycle, she voted against a bill that was going to ensure outdoor accommodation. So here in the 71st, like Go Ape or Jamestown Settlement, those types of places would have the ability to keep epinephrine on hand for their staff and train their staff. Mind you, there was no fiscal impact to Virginia, no liability on the state, simply just giving them permission to do so if they have a patron that gets stung by a bee or a wasp, and they can act and save their life. She voted against that. She voted against contraception protection. She voted against the ERA. She opted out of voting for the same-sex marriage constitutional amendment introduced this year, just so that she wouldn't go on record of saying she supports or doesn't support it. Like, I can go on and on the things that she's done. And let me be clear, these are not personal attacks. I do not know Delegate Batten personally. I am speaking to her voting record and how she has stood on issues for Virginians. But it is also worth noting that this recent image was taken on March 21st at a Karma meeting. And the gentleman in over there is a J6er who was found guilty of assaulting police officers with a pole brutally and sentenced to 51 months in prison before being pardoned. That guy with her. So not only is her policy extreme, but so is the company that she keeps. And the tea got a little hotter when Batten was asked about current minority leader Todd Gilbert, saying, I don't really have any communication with Todd. He does not communicate with me. Outside of that, I honestly couldn't begin to tell you the last time we had a one-on-one conversation. Batten even took it a step further, saying that Gilbert seems very much like he has a foot out the door, and then going on to say, as a leader, he sort of drives the train when it comes to fundraising and all of that, and that can be very challenging. And Gilbert absolutely fired back, rejecting any notion that he's disengaged from his role as minority leader, saying, I absolutely have not checked out. There are certainly people who fancy themselves a leader who don't have that responsibility and who choose to act out in other ways. And criticizing me is one way of doing that. Here's what I find the most interesting. Not the fact that she's trying to paint herself as a purple candidate, moderate, when her voting record clearly suggests otherwise. Not the fact that there's infighting between her and other leadership. None of that. The fact that she sat down and did this interview to talk about her trying to present herself as a leader in her party, yet she has ignored requests from the Daily Press, the Virginia Gazette, and the Williamsburg Watch to announce her formal candidacy. If you go on her social media, crickets. Nowhere is she announcing that she is formally running. And based on this article, I have to assume maybe she is. But again, the fact that you would sit down with a journalist and basically try to completely destroy your relationship with your minority leader and paint this image that you're leading the charge to help competitive seats win while not even making your own community aware of whether or not you're running, that's some tea all in itself, right? I can safely say it's going to be an interesting election year. That's for sure. Stay tuned, I guess.